welcome to another episode of the Revenue Focused Marketer, where we discuss anything and everything related to marketing as well as data. I'm your usual host, Hershey, and today I'm joined with someone who really specializes with brand strategy, and he's also the CEO and founder of the Maur company. So, welcome to the show, Clarence. It's so great to have you here today.
Hey Hershey, thanks for having me. I'm really excited to be here.
Yeah, thank you for all your time. Just a little bit about Clarence. He's helped drive purpose driven companies aligned with their voice, visuals, and values to drive loyalty that really lasts. And this is something like, in the wave of AI and this time that we are in now, I think loyalty is definitely something that is valued a lot. So I think it's a great time for us to really chat about this. Maybe let's start off with the foundations, right? And maybe by busting a myth. What isn't branding according to you, and why do so many people keep confusing branding with just aesthetics?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I think that when you think about the history and kind of the legacy of branding and kind of where it started, it really came from this idea of, back in the days, farmers or whatever would brand their cattle or their livestock, right?
Wow, yeah.
Or artisans who do pottery would sign their work, right? That's really where the concept of branding came from. So it really came from a place where it was this aesthetic view and
Mhm,
perspective. But in the modern business world, that has evolved over time to really mean more about the experience and the full kind of perspective that a customer or an employee or any person that interacts with your brand, it became about that overall experience.
mhm,
And we really saw that kind of be transformed by the introduction of social media when
mhm.
the world became so much more connected and it became so much more about people's experiences. And so that's where I think we are now today in terms of how we define brand as not just being this aesthetic visual identity,
Mhm.
but really about the experience.
Definitely. And it's been such a drastic change, right? From like,
Yeah.
I love the example that you kind of shared about how it really started off. And like, social media has definitely shifted so much now. I think if your company doesn't have like a LinkedIn or an Instagram now, do you even consider them being a legit company? Like,
Right.
that's a question that people kind of face in today's world, right?
Right.
And let's dive deeper into the meat of today's topic. How does branding influence customer experience and vice versa, right?
Yeah, I mean, when you think about brand again in the modern business world, you really have to think about it as the primary product of a business, right? Oftentimes, I think we think about it as something that we create. We think about it as something that we strategize about in terms of how we want customers to perceive, and that's true. We do. Like, there's a whole world of brand strategy, but really, what brand is this like an outcome, a product of really what the difference is between what you're strategizing, what you're planning, and what really comes to fruition. And sometimes a lot of it is a result of actions that we don't plan, actions that we don't
Mhm.
intend. It's more of what happens in the day to day.
Yeah.
And really, when we think about brand and customer experience, to me, and the way that I've come to understand it, it's one and the same, right? Like, I think we try to look at them as two independent things that are related,
Hmm.
but to me, the way that I have always defined brand is the customer experience. It's not
Definitely.
about what we try to put together, but it's what actually happens, what actually becomes. So it's a combination really of, the not just the interactions that people have with your business, but a lot of other different factors. It's what's happening out in the world. How is that affecting the individual customers' experiences? That's going to affect their perception and how that translates to how they perceive your brand.
Hmm.
So I think to answer your question, brand is really a culmination of that customer experience. And to
Definitely.
me, it's one and the same.
Awesome. And do you have maybe like a real life example of a brand that kind of nailed the connection between the brand promise and the actual customer experience?
I mean, it's probably pretty cliche, but I mean, if you look at Apple, I think, one of the things that really propelled them as a business is their Think Different campaign.
Yeah.
And they've really, stood behind that through every step of what they do. Like they're not really, focused on being the first on
Mhm.
anything, right? Like we often see this kind of competition between Samsung and Apple and who did it
Yeah.
first. But
Yeah.
Apple as a company, they don't really care about that, right? Like they
Mhm.
don't care if they're the third, the fourth, the fifth to do some feature or whatever it might be, because to them it's about thinking different, and that doesn't mean thinking about something novel. It means
Mhm.
really, taking things that maybe already exist and thinking about how to do that better.
Yeah.
And we've seen the company, grow significantly over the past, decade or so,
Mhm.
2 decades, I guess. And I think that's because they really deliver on that brand promise that they initiated back in, 2001 or 2003.
Yeah. No, definitely. That's like the ideal like mecca for like
Yeah.
companies, right? They want to kind of be like Apple, like that's the vision, and
Yeah,
they're
exactly.
definitely doing it right. So that's a good one to share for sure. Um, Kind of on the contrary, what are some early signs that a brand is misaligned with its customer journey? Like, I'm sure you kind of work with clients where you might see this misalignment a lot of the times. So, what are maybe some early signs?
Yeah, I mean, I think, one of the things that brands or businesses need to really kind of shift in terms of their mindset is to start internally. I think
Mhm.
when we think about the concept of brand, we often think about it as this external feature,
Yeah.
where like sure it starts inside the company in terms of how we strategize, how we decide what we want to present to the world,
Mhm.
but a lot of what we focus on is the external perception. But I think in 2025 and really from here with the proliferation of AI, we're really going to need companies to start within the company and what the internal brand looks like, because that's really going to affect everything else in terms of what happens in the external market, right? And so I think one of the early signs of misalignment and a branding problem is what's the culture within the organization. And we're seeing a lot of people really, pushing on this right now, at least from the employee standpoint, where we're seeing this kind of what I'm calling a corporate revolution, where people are just leaving corporate world. They're done with toxic corporate culture, and they're going to social media to talk about it, and all their toxic experiences. And I think that that is a very, very like early but prominent sign of a branding issue, because if
Yeah.
you think about it, the employees are really your customers, right?
Mhm.
And so if they're not aligned with what the brand is about, or if there's a misalignment between what the brand is promising and what the experience is within the organization,
Yeah.
that's your foundation crumbling. So I think that that is the earliest sign of branding issue.
Yeah, and that's a very unique perspective because when we think of brand, we don't technically even like, include our own employees a
Right.
lot of the times. But as you talked about them like starting internally, that's maybe the important aspect to kind of include them and make sure that they're feeling like, they're part of the brand, getting the same promise that you kind of want to deliver externally. um let's talk about like tension between marketing led growth and customer led growth. Like how can they typically support each other? Have you seen cases where there's tension between the two?
Can you elaborate on the question?
Yeah, so like a lot of the times there's different teams for marketing and for customer success, and they have different visions about how they want to execute this, so they can sometimes have tension between them. And is that
Yeah.
something that you have experienced, or just trying to find out what's the best way that teams that do face this misalignment can find a solution?
Yeah, so I think that that is absolutely something that happens in, a lot of companies today. And when you think about, sales, marketing, branding, all these facets of marketing, and really, you can go beyond that in terms of all the other areas of business. But when you talk about the areas within the marketing department or the marketing discipline, they all kind of operate in silos, right? Like, and that's where we see a lot of the misalignment. Like, there's this age-old argument that sales isn't marketing, or now what I'm seeing a lot of on social media is people um, perpetuating this idea that branding isn't marketing. And
Mm-hmm.
so it starts to really separate all these different facets of marketing that have to work together in order to deliver the brand promise. And I think that the fundamental reason for that misalignment is a misunderstanding of the purpose of marketing within the business landscape, right? I
Mm-hmm.
think a lot of, especially modern marketers today, look at marketing as a tactical aspect of business versus a strategic aspect of business.
Mm-hmm.
It's really this differentiation between, marketing big M and marketing little m, which is the difference between strategic, over like strategic long-term orientation, and then the tactical day-to-day operational aspect of things. So I
Mm-hmm.
think that that misalignment between, customer success teams, marketing teams, branding teams comes from that misunderstanding where, okay, we kind of serve different functions of marketing or different functions of business, and it becomes very individualized versus having maybe a person, whether it's a CMO, a VP, a director, who is really focused on making sure there's alignment between those areas of marketing,
Mm-hmm.
so that we don't or they don't risk kind of increasing this chasm of misalignment between each of those areas.
Yeah, and I've also noticed this concept of like branding being even separate than marketing
Yeah.
lately. You're right, that's like the newest sort of trend that I'm hearing. What are your
Mhm.
thoughts on that? Do you think that's justified? Are they just like kind of creating more silos than we need today?
Yeah, I mean, and to be completely honest, every time I see this on social media or whatever, my blood boils. Um, and I think that I understand and I respect the argument behind it, because branding is emerging as this more holistic aspect of marketing, and I think it's important to lean into that to be a successful business leader or a successful marketer. But
Mhm.
when we educate and inform the general public or whatever that branding isn't marketing or that branding is this whole separate thing, I think we are just increasing the chasm of misalignment within the organization and really within the marketing discipline,
Mhm.
when in fact what we need to be doing is reducing that misalignment, right? When we just talk about marketing as a discipline, I think what we need to be doing as marketers is to make sure that we're not driving these you know areas of marketing apart, if that
Mhm.
makes sense,
Especially when
because
there's already so much misalignment between
so
other teams
much.
like sales, like, that's another, like, I guess, hot one where,
Mhm.
people often have some, and like the CRO role has kind of
Right,
become that role that kind of now has to guide both of them and kind of keep the peace between the
right.
two.
And it's
Because,
become like it's overcomplicated, the business landscape, right? Like when we
Mhm.
start to really make these siloed departments within the business, it just,
Mhm.
the more separation you create, the harder it becomes to manage an organization. Because when you're looking at marketing, truly marketing should be the north star of a business, right? Like, I have this belief that the successful business of tomorrow are the ones that have a CMO as a CEO, because they are looking at the market in this kind of holistic view, where they're
Mhm.
looking at sales, they're looking at branding, they're looking at all these things that marketing looks at, and when we say things like branding isn't sales, or branding isn't marketing, or sales isn't marketing, we're moving away from that.
Mhm. Definitely. Yeah. And I guess, like, to add on to that, I think it definitely adds to the frustration level that people see, because when you're so divided, then the thought process and the end goal that you're trying to meet is completely like the you lose touch of that, right?
100%. Yeah.
So kind of keeping those, that's a very interesting point, like having the CMO really in being in the CEO's role and kind of seeing that as a holistic market. I also wanted to get your thoughts on, like, a lot of people kind of still see marketing as like the cost center, and that's the sort of narrative, like, marketers and CMOs are trying really hard to shift from, because nowadays people want you to think of marketing as an investment. And anytime you talk about an investment, then follow-up questions like, what about the ROI, right? So a lot of marketing is becoming more technical also, in the sense that you don't just have to deliver certain assets. You're also responsible as a CMO, or like, head of your marketing team, to give sort of these, like, parameters and analytics and like things that you're supposed to kind of look at to ensure that you're meeting sort of, the right, the company is making the right investment. So
Right.
what are your thoughts on this sort of evolving space right now when it comes to marketing and it being an investment?
Yeah. I mean, I absolutely believe that it is an investment. I think that that question comes from, again, this over time, marketing became this tactical thing, right? Where I
Mhm.
think initially the intent for it as a discipline was for it to be strategic. But because over really the last, say, 20 years or so, the modern idea of marketing became so focused on the tactical aspect of it. And really that was kind of exacerbated by data, right?
Mhm.
And how everything now in marketing can be measured essentially.
Yeah.
Um, and so, yes, I think that today it's become a cost center because we have so many channels, more than we ever have. And they all cost, right? Like we live in a subscription economy where as
Mhm.
a business, you maybe back in the day had one or two monthly payments to run your
Yeah.
business. And now there's like 20 or 30.
Yeah.
Especially for a marketer, you now have, a dozen different subscriptions in order to get different pieces of data that should be talking to each other, but don't.
Mhm.
So I do think that it has become a cost center. But to your point, we need to emphasize more on the investment aspect of it. And I think that comes from, again, shifting the mindset and really taking a step back and understanding the difference between marketing big M, which is the strategic long term view of marketing,
Mhm.
and marketing little m, which is the tactical operational aspect of it. And if
Mhm.
businesses can't take a step back and really think about what that means in terms of their business, then it will always be a cost center.
That's a really good point. Yeah, and I kind of want to talk about like something that's not avoidable in conversations anymore. Uh,
AI.
yeah, you guessed that right. Um, but here's the twist, right? Can AI actually enhance customer experience without compromising the brand and the brand tone? Love to get your thoughts on, like, this aspect.
I think I think it can, but I think it's going to be heavily dependent on the person who's leading that business's or that company's brand or AI strategy. Because I
Mhm.
think when it comes to brand, but really anything in business right now, what we're going to see, this year and really in the next maybe 3 years is this finding this balance between human and AI. And that's going to have, you know, insane implications when it comes to branding and the customer experience. But I think it's possible. I think that it's just again a matter of how we as people make choices in terms of how we utilize AI.
Mhm. No, definitely. It's choice, especially when you're given so much responsibility with how much you can do. our choices really kind of like differentiate. And I think there's a very thin line between like, the two. So it's definitely an interesting aspect in terms of like what AI can do right now for people. Are there use cases that you've seen where AI is like being very effective in marketing that you would recommend to like other businesses, but specifically like, the small and medium size that are still growing and trying to adopt AI?
Yeah, I mean, I think the small and mid-sized businesses is really where AIs can have the most significant impact. I think when we look at, your large enterprises, they're looking at using AI for efficiency and really to reduce costs,
Mhm.
where they replace, traditional work that has been done by people, to then, low cost systems that can automate the work. But when you talk about small and mid-sized businesses, I think where AI can really make a difference is their ability to do work that they might not have been able to because they don't have the resources,
Mhm.
right? So um, think about AI as an employee that you would have had to hire to support the work that your team is doing, or even really enhancing a small business's ability to think in larger scale and to have product or service iterations and even brainstorming sessions where maybe for a solopreneur, for example, you know you sit in an empty room by yourself and you're thinking about the next step in your business, and you're developing all these different facets of your business, and you don't have
Mhm.
somebody to bounce off of.
Yeah.
But having a tool like AI where you can pose your ideas, get some feedback,
Mhm.
I think will really help small and mid-sized businesses scale differently than we've ever seen them do before.
Definitely. That's a super good point that, a lot of companies even miss to touch. They kind of want to compare themselves to bigger companies and think, oh,
Mhm.
efficiency, oh, maybe I'll get there, or like saving some cost. But it's about being able to do things that you weren't able to do before. So
Yeah.
that's a wonderful way to look at it. Another aspect of like, this space of AI is also kind of becoming overwhelming, is what I'm hearing like from a lot of like people, like specifically business owners. There's so many tools that are coming out there, right? Like almost every, like even when you're sleeping there's a new
Yeah.
tool
I knew.
being kind of, so
It's
it's kind of
insane.
hard. Yeah, it's kind of hard to stay up to date with the changes that are happening in this space with AI. Are there tools that you kind of swear by or you recommend that you've used and kind of really seen value in? And are there tools that you would kind of recommend others to utilize?
Yeah, so let's see. Um, I 100% I live by Gemini. That, like, in my day to day I use that, but that's basic. Everybody pushes for Chat GPT, but I am a huge Gemini proponent. But an AI tool that I use a lot right now is a tool called Apollo, and I
Mhm.
honestly think that this is a tool that is going to change the game for a lot of businesses. I mean, we talk about small and mid-sized businesses, and in the past, up until 2 years ago when ChatGPT was introduced and the AI race began,
Yeah.
um, scaling a small business took a really long time because in most cases you didn't have the resources to put together a sales force,
Mhm.
um, or really even a marketing team to go out there and sell your business. But when we have a tool like Apollo, which, are you familiar, by the way, with Apollo?
No, I am
So
not.
Apollo
I'd love to hear more.
So Apollo is a sales prospecting tool, essentially. There's other tools out there like Seamless AI, I'd say, is one of their bigger competitors. But
Mhm. Yeah.
basically, what it is a prospecting tool where you can essentially find contact information for professionals in the business world, and it's heavily based on LinkedIn profiles and things like that. But you
So
can
it's
type
great.
in
Yeah.
yeah, so you can type in like a company name. You can filter by, revenue size, employee size. Like, there's a lot of different parameters that you can filter off of, but you can target the kind of people that you want to get in contact with,
Mhm.
and get an email address, get a phone number. that is vetted. So what it really allows businesses to do is kind of surpass what traditionally has been gatekeepers, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like before, back in the day, you would have to, call in to even get an email address, call in to get in contact with, a higher up or whatever. And this is kind of eliminating that. And when you look at a small business who in the past would not have had the resources to get in touch with, decision makers and companies as easily as they do now, it's a game changer. Because now in one day I can find contact information for 200 different people, send
Yeah.
an email to all those people introducing myself, talking about the problem that I solve, and I saved myself what would have been the cost of, 3, 5, 10 salespeople.
Mm-hmm.
But now I'm able to scale, which I think is crazy.
That's wonderful. Yeah. And is this tool free or is it a paid tool that you've utilized?
Yeah, they have a free version. So I've used both Seamless and Apollo. They're very similar.
Mm-hmm.
Apollo is a lot more cost effective.
Okay.
They both operate off of a credit
Mm.
aspect,
Yeah.
but Apollo's free version does have a lot more credits than Seamless free version.
Okay.
So I think it's a tool that every business owner should check out.
Yeah. I know
Um,
that's an exciting one. I am excited to kind of check it out myself.
Yeah,
So
and I
thank
will say, like, I
you.
want to add because I think this is important. Because when we talk about branding, I think, if we put that in the context of your career, an individual person, you know, and what they're doing with their professional life, I think branding also matters there, right? Like how
Mhm.
we present ourselves. And one of the big problems we're seeing today is, the labor market is very, very rough.
Yeah.
And people are finding it difficult to find jobs or to even get interviews. And when we talk about tools like Apollo, it's initially designed as a sales prospecting tool, but I think that it's a tool that people can leverage in their career to get in front of people who are hiring or might be hiring or maybe not hiring and really
Yeah.
present themselves in a different way. And really, when we talk about, I wanted to bring this up because we're talking about branding. I think it's an opportunity to brand yourself differently than the millions of people who are competing for the same job.
Yeah.
So I just wanted to say that because I think that's really important for anybody who might be listening who is in a career changing kind of place in their life.
No,
Um,
definitely. And so many
Apollo could be a
layoffs
good use.
lately, like,
Yeah.
in this sort of uncertainty, it's kind of nice to be able to have tools that can really help you. So that's a really good
Yeah.
use of a sales. I couldn't have thought about it. So that's a good one. Thank you so much for sharing
Yeah.
that. Um, that's a good talk about AI and, kind of the space that we are in right now. I kind of want to bring back to, like, a lot of times brands, there's like this emotional driven sort of, feel to it that kind of keeps people coming back.
Mhm.
So how do you intentionally build emotional resonance into a brand? Is that something that you worked with? Any experience in that space?
I wouldn't say that I've ever intentionally tried to build in emotional resonance.
Mhm.
Like I was saying at the beginning of the show, brand is really a product of a lot of things that we can't control, right?
Mhm.
Like strategy and kind of this intentional branding is one aspect of branding. And the rest of it, like I'd say 80-20, right? Like 80% of it is a result of things outside of our control. It's what actually happens once we put the strategy out there, right? And emotions are one of those things. It's not something that I believe we could really influence. Like I
Mhm.
think we maybe could in, a small way. But ultimately there's a lot of factors that come into play in terms of emotion that we can't control. And I also think it comes back to the topic of authenticity,
Mhm.
which is something that's going to come up a lot, in the age of AI.
Yeah.
And when we are, trying to influence a certain emotion, I think we start to dive into the authenticity aspect of branding.
Mhm.
And so, to answer the question, I don't from a strategic standpoint, intentionally try to create emotional resonance.
Mhm. No, that's a good point. And I also really like that you kind of chimed in upon the authenticity. I think that's definitely something that's, being able to now, customers can use that to distinguish between, which brands they want to kind of work with or move forward with.
Mm-hmm.
Because even though AI is doing a great job, it's kind of gonna come down later to, like, who's being more authentic, who can really kind of, keep the promise that they kind of signed up with their brand. And sometimes AI might not be able to kind of fulfill the criteria. So that's where, the human touch can really, the personalization aspect, that's where it can kind of really make a difference, I think.
Yeah, and I think that'll be interesting because I mean, if you think about us as people, we already struggle with the concept of authenticity,
Yeah.
right? And then you throw something like AI into the mix,
Mhm.
and what does authenticity really mean
Yeah.
in that age? And I think that'll be interesting to see how that unfolds,
Mhm.
especially in terms of how it affects branding.
Definitely.
Because like
Uh,
think about like the M dash, right? Like this whole argument about the M dash and how people see it and they immediately think AI, and then
yeah.
that this creates this cascading effect of, do I trust this brand because they're probably using AI? But
Yeah.
M dash is something that has been around forever, and if you are somebody who is good with grammar and writing, M dash is
Yeah.
one of your secret superpowers.
Yeah.
But now it completely redefined, trust and authenticity in terms
And
of
there's
your
so much
content.
hate towards
So
the
much
M
hate.
dash
Yeah,
now. Like
so much hate.
anytime
But
you want your AI to sound authentic, you just, hey, remove all the M
remove all the
dashes.
M dash, which is, it's really interesting to look at that, as a study, because again, like, you're looking at something so simple as the M dash, but if you really take a step back and try to understand what that is implying in terms of how people are reacting to it, it's really
Mhm.
influencing trust, it's influencing branding. And it's crazy to really look at the implications of that little thing.
Yeah. Who would have thought it'll be an
Who would
M
have
dash
thought?
that kind of, distinguishes people and kind of builds that trust, or
Yeah.
not the trust if you're kind of
Yeah,
using it.
exactly.
So it's a great thought. We're kind of coming towards the end of our session here today, but what excites you the most about, the next couple years of being in marketing and branding and customer success? Like, what's something you're looking forward to?
I mean, I hate to say it because it's what everybody's looking for. Well, I wouldn't say everybody, because some people are, still fairly afraid of it. But to me, it's really, kind of what I referenced back at the beginning of the show, is the balance between AI and, the human aspect of things. And I
Mhm.
really, built my company, the More company, on the notion of, you know, building human centric workplaces. And that was propelled by what was really initiated by the COVID-19 pandemic, where
Mhm.
we were put into isolation, and really for a couple years we were forced to reevaluate our lives, our careers, and our purpose. And I don't think that we have yet processed that. Like, we're
Mhm.
just barely starting to see the true effects of that, right? Like with the Great Resignation and 4 million people a month, like leaving and quitting their jobs to
Yeah.
reevaluate life. I think we're just now seeing that. And then now we throw AI into the mix, where we're talking about things like AI replacing jobs and AI replacing people. And I think that that is significantly exacerbating that problem of, what's my purpose? What am I doing with my life? And that's going to be really interesting. So I think we need more companies who are focused on the human conversation
Mhm.
within the context of AI, but also by itself. Like, really redefining, or creating different foundations in terms of what it means to be a human in the workplace. And so, to answer the question, that's what I'm really excited to see unfold, and a little bit afraid. A little bit afraid, but excited, because I think
Yeah.
we'll rise up to the occasion at some point. And it'll be exciting to see what kind of transformations that comes up with.
Yeah. Wow. This has been such an amazing conversation. And I know I have learned a lot here today. So I'm
Thank
sure
you.
our listeners
Me
will
too.
too. So thank you so much for joining us today. It's very clear that, brand isn't just a logo or a tagline, it's the entire relationship between a business and its customers and, also its employees, which I learned today, right? So, for people that kind of, want to get in touch with you, learn more about your brand, where can they really reach out to you?
Yeah, our website, themourcompany.com, that's more spelled Maur, is a good place. We have our contact form in there.
Mhm.
And then LinkedIn is also a really good place. I'm very, active on there. So connect with me there, send me a message. I love connecting with people and talking about things like this because I think it's going to be really exciting to see what and how this unfolds over the next couple of years. So reach out and connect.
Awesome. Thank you so much for your time today. And also thank you to our listeners for, kind of staying on, listening to all the wonderful speakers that we have. And if, you're building a brand that kind of goes beyond the funnel, I think this episode's definitely a must share. So do tell us your reviews. And until next time, just keep building amazing brands that last and, stay thoughtful as well as curious in the space of marketing. So thank you so much.
Yes, thanks, Hershey, and thanks, everybody.